I had the opportunity to go in the month of September to both Krakow in Poland and Lviv in Ukraine with an organization called JDC Entwine. The purpose of the trip was really to showcase some of the incredible achievements of the Jewish community and also the larger Ukrainian community in West Ukraine, as well as the different kinds of supports and people and networks and programs that are there to uplift people who are suffering. Throughout this video, I wanted to get different perspectives, I wanted to touch on the different topics, and ultimately I wanted to give all of you an inside look as to what we were doing there in a country that is ultimately in the throes of a conflict, quite a severe conflict. The situation in Ukraine that was started back in February of 2022 has gone through ebbs and flows. However, right now in September of 2024, ultimately it is upscaling and becoming even more severe. As the country is strained and as foreign support for the country is diminishing worldwide, Ukrainians need your help. Ukrainian people need your help. And especially in America, where the Jewish community is quite philanthropic, they feel the burning desire to be able to give to people in need and to causes that are righteous and just. I would just say that if you yourself are a Jewish person living anywhere in the world, and especially if you're an American and you're able to give to JDC Entwine to support its efforts on the ground, please do so. So without further ado, in front of the Vistula River here in Krakow, let's begin this journey together so that we can see what the community in Lviv has to offer.
I have your trip. Was that Arielle? Yeah. And Andrea. Are you sure they had it? Yeah. No, it was actually, they had one, I think in like November.
We began the trip in Krakow looking at a number of artifacts, photographs, and paintings in a museum to document the history of Jewish life in Poland, both before, during, and after the Shoah. Next, we would go on to visit the Jewish Community Center in Krakow, where I was fortunate enough to interview the director.
My name is Jonathan Ornstein. I am the CEO of the Jewish Community Center of Krakow, an organization that was opened 16 years ago by now King Charles, then Prince Charles, with the idea of, one, taking care of Holocaust survivors, and we have almost 60 Holocaust survivors here in Krakow, but really looking more toward the future, beyond taking care of the survivors, which is that there are a lot of Poles who have Jewish roots, and we are trying to do everything we can to reach out and find these lost Jews who were really the descendants of either Holocaust victims or Holocaust survivors, and bring them back into the fold. And all the time while showing that Poland is not only a place of death, not only a place of tragedy, that Poland is once again a place of Jewish life, and the idea that Jewish life is thriving at our JCC, which is an hour's drive from Auschwitz, really speaks to the resilience and strength of the Jewish people. The idea that Jewish life is possible even next to Auschwitz, with an open, pluralistic, forward-looking Jewish community that's growing. It's very safe to be Jewish here. A lot of the problems with anti-Semitism we don't really experience or haven't really been experiencing in Krakow. And this idea that one of the safest, easiest places in the world to be Jewish is a place that 80 years ago was the epicenter of the Holocaust and was the worst place to be Jewish, is, I think, that has really a lot of meaning and resonates with the Jewish people today.
Absolutely. So in the context of this trip, we're here with JDC Entwine, spending a little bit of time in Krakow, and then the main focus of the trip is, of course, in Poland, to have a discussion with Ukrainians, about their life, and especially about how...
It's about Ukraine, the focus on Ukraine, you mean?
Yeah, and about, the conflict and what it means to be Jewish and the Jewish history within the Galicia region, which, of course, Krakow is a part of. So, the history is very intertwined and the cultures are very intertwined. And I would love to know more about some of the amazing work that you've done for people who have fled the endemic violence in Ukraine to come to Poland to try and, continue to live.
Sure. So we're about 2.5 hours from the border. And on the first day of the war in February 2022, we decided to put up a banner in front of the building saying, "Welcome in Ukrainian," in blue and yellow. We thought it would be up for a few days. I didn't know what was going to happen with the war, but I knew that there would be some refugees coming to Krakow, and I wanted, as a Jewish community, to show that we welcome these refugees. Well, a few started to come in the building. They told us that they needed things. We ran to the shop to buy these people things. They started to see more people started to come in. Local Poles started to see these people coming in. They started to drop off food and clothing and whatever was needed. And this food pantry, by the second day of the war, we'd opened a food pantry, which we've never closed. And it kind of just grew and grew, and feeding Ukrainians in Krakow grew into housing them, grew into operating on the Ukrainian side of the Polish border, turned into sending food deep into Ukraine, into regions that weren't being reached by anybody else, turned into to daycare, housing, I said, psychological support, and we really became, within a week or two, a full-scale humanitarian aid organization. So we were 35 full-time before the war started, and we went up to 70 full-time within a couple weeks. And
wow.
We were housing at the high point, feeding about 400 a day and housing over 500 people a day in a housing that we sourced and paid for these Ukrainian refugees. During 2 years ago, during the high point, we were, again, about 1,000 people a day we were serving. Now we're serving between 300 and 400 a day. Most are women and children. We have directly helped 360,000 Ukrainian refugees, 98% of whom are not Jewish. And we've raised and spent $12 million doing so, which is 4 times our annual budget. And we've done this, we've taken this on because, this community, the growth of this community, the arc of this community is not only for us to be reborn and take care of ourselves, but, I think it's come full circle that now we're able to help others. And we are mindful of the fact that 80 years ago, when the Jews were the primary victims during the Holocaust, that the world remained mostly silent. And we think that gives us a particular responsibility not only to care for ourselves and care for Jews, of course we do that, but to reach out and try to care for the other, because we know what it means to be on the other side of that equation when nobody helped us, and it gives us a knowledge of that feeling of abandonment. We have to try to prevent it from happening to others. So we continue today, more than 2.5 years into the war. We are continuing to house, feed, and provide support to about 400 women and children a day.
Wow. Okay, Jonathan, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, you know the butterfly project? No. It's like I've never seen it.
So a single thing.
Okay, so Jess. Okay, I'm gonna remember.
Mark has like 180. Copenhagen.
Spending time at the Jewish Community Center and walking around the streets of Krakow evoked a lot of emotions within me. It's really interesting as somebody who is from North America to take in more classical, more medieval style architecture, more romantic style architecture exists in European cities, and to see a place that was so full of vibrant Jewish life, where we were able to see all sorts of different interesting businesses, cafes, hangout spots, and places of worship, either still intact or as a monument in the city of Krakow. I think the city really tells a story, and I don't want to just parrot a narrative that I think is very common and mainstream, which is one that, of course, a society was taken over by an exceptionally hostile and outright genocidal force that inevitably destroyed Jewish life in Poland. I think the story of Krakow within the larger country of Poland is one where perhaps there's a lesson there even for all of us today, which is that two peoples from very different walks of life and very different understandings of the world can still create a wonderful hybridized society within which both groups of people ultimately benefit from. Next, I want to show you some excerpts from many of the other people who are on the trip with me.
Our time in Krakow has been really, really interesting. One of the things I've found most interesting is the non-Jewish engagement in Jewish community. We saw more than I've ever seen in any other country before. So many non-Jews participating in Jewish life, working at the JCC, working at the Jewish museums, and it's really gotten me thinking about what that could look like on a broader scale across the world.
I thought Krakow was really beautiful. I love that although it is a city that has been really hurt and devastated by the past, you also see a lot of the past in the present, and definitely a lot of uncomfortable parts, but also a really, really beautiful experience to explore culture and heritage and the past and the future.
Okay, I really love learning about all the Jewish history before the Holocaust and really taking a moment to reflect that the Jewish community isn't defined by just 1939 and just those difficult years, but there was so much beautiful Jewish life before and there's so much new Jewish life after, and I think being able to really kind of bring those two concepts together gives me a lot of hope for that community and really exciting stuff happening at JCC.
I'm going first.
Yeah, you're going first.
Krakow, this was definitely a different experience that I had in Krakow than the previous times I've been in Krakow, because we got to go to the JCC and see how they're bringing light to this place with a lot of death and a lot of Jewish blood that you kind of feel everywhere. And at the beginning, when we first arrived, I was pretty depressed about that, I have to say. And then when we went to JCC Krakow, met Jonathan, I felt I'm definitely glad that he's doing what he's doing and bringing more light to this place that you can just really feel a lot of Jewish pain.
I have a very softball question.
Yeah, so definitely different than the last time as well.
Yeah.
I think my last time in Krakow was defined more by just this historical witness, the Holocaust and the modern community and whatever. But now I think what strikes me is just that uncanny sense of bar hopping, museum going, whatever, enjoying this vibrant city, lively city that is on as we are approaching the threshold. And there are just these small echoes of that. When I went with David, who is definitely not involved in filming this right now, and we came across a vigil our first night there. And I seem to recall one of the people who gave us ribbons crying as she did so, or a little bit. Or seeing the lines of people coming for food, and just that dual reality of where we're going compared to this thriving, fun, dark history, but safe city of today in Krakow.
It was really interesting. First of all, it was my first time in Poland, and I wasn't sure how Poland would feel, but it felt like how I thought Poland would feel. You can feel the history, and you can feel the dissonance between the happiest times that Jews have felt in Poland, and the long history, and the saddest times that Jews have felt in Poland. And how those two things come together defines the future of the Polish Jewish community and the diaspora at large. So it's
we met with the head of the JCC in Krakow. He was emphasizing how a lot of American Jews can trace their roots back to Poland and Polish Jewry, and it really felt like it was my JCC because the ancestral connection, and even though I'd never been there before, it was just really meaningful.
It's been fascinating to see Krakow and how the legacy of the Holocaust has been processed and remembrance is happening, but also Jewish community is still surviving and thriving, and how they're dealing with memory. And it's a fascinating place, and it is sad to be around places where you see Stars of David, former synagogues aren't being used that way, and are just kind of shells of their former self, but it was still hopeful to see some of those community elements that are really still being successful.
Time in Krakow, Poland. It feels like a place honestly lost in time itself, preserved almost perfectly. And the Jewish community almost feels like it should be like that too. But you go there and there aren't a lot of people left. But there are a lot of people who want to make it so that isn't the case. And that is also immensely beautiful and immensely inspiring. And Krakow is a place that is so pertinent both in history of Poland itself, in Poland's own history, and now. You walk the streets of Poland and you hear this amalgamation of Polish, English from tourists, but more interestingly, all of the Russian and Ukrainian from the refugees that have come in the past 950-something days. It's a remarkable place. It's a remarkable place to be.
Let's talk about Krakow. Krakow is a very interesting city, not just for the Jewish population, for the world in general. Why? Because the historic load that it has, and also it's the preamble to a way more extreme experience that we're going to have, that is, we're on the way to Ukraine.
Krakow is a fascinating city. It shows the story of the Jewish people in a nutshell. I came expecting to see a remnant community, but found one that's thriving, one that has a fascinating future, and one that's really inspiring with how they've approached the Ukraine conflict.
Thank you.
My name is Arielle Sokoloff. I'm the Director of Engagement at JDC Entwine. Entwine is a platform of JDC, and our mission is to inspire young adults in their 20s and 30s to see global Jewish responsibility as a core part of their identity. And we do that by bringing folks to Jewish communities abroad and the places where JDC works in order to connect with the global Jewish world and then bring it back home to their local spaces.
In what way does both?
Absolutely. So Kavanah, or intention, is one of Entwine's core values, and on the very first day of our experiences, we help people dig into why they're coming on our trips and how we approach every single thing we do during our insider trips or our year-long fellowships with a really intentional mindset. We're not just showing up for fun. We're not showing up to volunteer. We're showing up to really, really learn and connect and build relationships with people so that by the end of the trip, folks understand how to bring it home with them and how to activate this value of asiyah, or taking action. So we want people who are maybe meeting elderly in the community that we're visiting to start volunteering in New York or wherever they're from at home. We want people to understand how philanthropy might fit into their lives as leaders. Another example would be just hosting a global Shabbat for their friends so that they can educate the people in their lives about what they've seen abroad. There's so many different ways to take action, and all of that starts with exploring Kavanah and understanding that this is a much deeper experience than just going abroad for a week. Rejoin is a program that we developed a few years ago to bring Entwine alumni to the next step with JDC. So we've had Rejoin twice in Israel since 2019, and this is the first time we're here in Ukraine. We were exploring a new place for people who've traveled with us before to understand what it means to take action and to bring the experience home. Ukraine was a really natural fit for that because we're visiting a place that is not really talked about in the news. And it is highlighting the really significant need on the ground here for our community leaders. So this group of people are activists in their communities. They are engaged in Jewish organizations across the United States and beyond, and they now have an opportunity to tell the stories of the people we're meeting here in Ukraine.
Why is it important? After dinner and the first night after arriving in Lviv, we decided to explore a bunch of the city at night. It was very unique to be in Lviv that evening, and the one thing that really stuck out to me was that Lviv was ultimately a city of young people. You never really saw anyone who was middle-aged or elderly. It was entirely populated by the youth. Perhaps not surprisingly though, people had a large sense of solidarity. They were out with one another. They spent time with one another in the evenings. They never really wanted to be alone at a time where the country as a whole is, even right now, shaken to its core. Young people are finding the strength to go on in one another.
Українська мова, українська пісня, українська думка, українська мрія, українська мета, українське слово.
In your heart there's Ukrainian songs, Ukrainian life, Ukrainian love, Ukrainian dreams.
І ми почнемо жити заново.
My family is from Ukraine. In fact, my mom's ancestors came to Canada from the Lviv greater metropolitan area back in the 1920s and 30s, about a century ago. It has been truly amazing to be able to see these people carrying on life in this place, in such a beautiful country with so much soul and so much spirit, and to witness people who, in the face of imminent danger, while staring down an existential threat, are really undeterred. They want to experience love and joy and harmony and exuberance, just like you and I. And I think that's a really important takeaway from Ukraine. It's that even though this is far away, it certainly is closer to home than we realize. Our first full day in Lviv was genuinely packed with activity and new people and new faces, listening to stories and getting to witness some very unique things. And I'm going to try and show you a few clips from a number of different places that we hit that day.
Everybody, first time we have this amount of people here.
Так, я надеюсь, вы тоже к нам подключитесь. Что мы сегодня будем делать? У нас есть буковки. Лена сейчас раздаст буквы. Для чего мы сейчас выясним, да?
My dad died 20 years ago. Two males, everyone is doing their life. She lives not alone. She lives.
You know, exactly.
This is amazing.
It's more full Jewish council, as I told you in the beginning, the 30% of the population of the city is Jewish population.
I mean, it's ganz loud up there.
No, I'm Jewish.
Grain? Grain or potato? Yeah. That's why I was like,
Yes. The students.
What year? When?
That's quite a lot.
Wow.
And also math.
Information about our partnership is joined, about the programs and all like this, and then you can feel free to ask any questions and just chat to our.
Для подопечных золотого возраста.
This during this 26 years, this
Gold
group, big group, Shane Mendele, 21 years, since 21 years. Beautiful girl.
We were fortunate enough to go to this really cool restaurant called You Cook, and effectively there is a small team of chefs which guide the guests of the restaurant together to build a very authentic Ukrainian meal for dinner, and it was one of the most exciting things I've certainly ever done in terms of a culinary experience. Next, I really want to show you an interview that I got to do with the head of Hillel in Lviv, which has been an unparalleled resource for Jewish people coming from across Ukraine to the western part of the country, seeking out Jewish resources to get connected and build community again.
Okay, my name is Nataliya Tolok, or Nata Tolok. I'm the head of Hillel Lviv, and actually the only Hillel in the western part of Ukraine, and also I'm the member of the staff of Hesed Arielle, the Jewish Charitable Foundation Community Center.
All right. So thank you so much for introducing yourself. Why don't we go into a little bit about what Hillel Lviv does and maybe a little bit of the mission of the organization?
So of course the mission of Hillel Lviv is the same as Hillels all over the world, in the USA, global Hillels. So just to attract and to engage young Jewish people to one community, to one organization, one place, and to introduce them to Jewish history, tradition, just to give them the basics of Judaism if they're interested, and also to keep them together and to develop their soft skills and some professional skills, why not, and lots of other things.
So this video that we have put together, it's all about displaying what life is like in contemporary Ukraine, both for Jewish and non-Jewish people, at a time in Ukraine which is difficult for everybody due to the conflict that is ongoing. How do you think the Jewish community here in Lviv is coming together and, interacting with people who have been perhaps displaced by the conflict? What is life like for both the survivors and also the Jews here in Lviv?
So we're still in the process. It's more than 2 years. It's still going on. So we know that definitely I can tell that in 2022 we had a huge wave of IDPs, internally displaced people from Kharkiv, for example. And our Hillel just enriched by the participants from Hillel Kharkiv and also from other cities as well. And some of them continued their way to other countries, but a big number settled here and they intend to stay in Lviv. So I cannot tell that life is easy, so moving to another place, but we are talking about young people with perspectives and skills, and so they find work here, so they rent apartments, so they live. So what they have to do. So we are supporting them as much as we can. First of all, as we feel that we have to be kind of a hub, a place, a safe place. That is the most important right now and has been. The place where they can come, always come for support, emotional support, psychological support, sometimes physical support as well. When they need food or money or something like that, we also find ways to support them. So it's not only about the young people, so we have different projects and programs of supporting the internally displaced people here. So we try to employ them whenever we can, give them opportunities to work, to be useful, to make money, and in different ways.
So thank you for that, of course. And at a personal level, what things go on in your mind in terms of like the role that you play as the director of Hillel, and also just as a citizen here in Lviv and as a Ukrainian?
Oh yes, so the role is to stay here, to be available to those who need me personally, or the organization, or the place, or whatever.
Yeah.
Yes, and actually we are all standing, we are all waiting for it to end, and for peace, for victory, and but anyway, to have normal life. Because we are in a constant stress and worry and fear, so this is kind of our real life right now. Psychologically it is not easy, but anyway, our role, what is our role? To support, to continue our Jewish life here, to provide the Jews with what they need. I mean, tradition, holidays, Shabbats, so the Jewish identity in all the ways that we can just provide, and this is our role here.
Now, I think in Canada, of course, there is both a large Ukrainian diaspora community and a large Jewish diaspora community, both of which came to Canada in the 20th century. If you had one message to conclude this little segment with for the Ukrainians and the Jews living in Canada, what message would that be?
I can't send one message just from this sport, but the thing that, yes, we are just naming Ukrainian and Jews just side by side. This is the real time when we feel we are all together. So we are citizens in one country, and actually we right now fighting side to side, our young people. It is very important to be together.
What have you guys felt like while you've been here in Lviv? What are some things that you really have moved you?
Our time in Lviv has been extremely emotionally challenging. It's been really difficult to fully understand the Ukrainian experience from abroad, but coming here has been an extremely eye-opening one. Being able to interact with people and hear their stories has made it a very emotionally charged experience, but one that I think I will take with me for the rest of my life.
And everywhere we've gone, from this dinner to the chesed to the one-on-one conversations, we've seen nothing but love and support in this community. Support for each other, support for the internally displaced people who've come to Lviv to figure out where to go and what to do next, and support for more engagement with the Jewish world at large.
Yeah, I think we've really realized how united this community is. They face so many challenges and there's so much hardship, but a lot of them are very hopeful about the future. They're very grateful for the outside world support, and I think that gives them a lot of strength. I think especially with the work of the JDC, they feel like people outside of Ukraine care enough about them and support them enough that it gives them the strength to really go on and face the crisis here, and they know they're not alone, and I think that can be really hard for anyone, but they have each other, they have us in some ways, so the JDC really provides that emotional support and obviously financial support so that they can go on each day.
So what is perhaps one thing from each of you that you're going to be taking away from this experience and bringing back to the United States?
One of the things that I'm going to be taking back with me to the United States is seeing this organization called the volunteer community that they have here. They basically bring Ukrainians from all over the country for seminars throughout the year, but also each of these volunteers work in their community, they develop their own projects, they see the need and they address it. But seeing such a united Jewish community has been really beautiful. It's different than what I've experienced with my previous times with JDC or in my own community at home. And I just find it really special, really empowering, and it was really beautiful.
And those volunteer centers have grown, I think, from 16 when they started to 33 as of this year. And I remember when we asked how many volunteers an individual center has normally, there was no concrete answer because it depends on how many people they can engage in a community. And in some communities, that number is as big as half of the people living in the community. And it really plays into JDC's emphasis on self-sustainability, where you have members of these communities coming together, volunteer not only to support each other, but to engage in their community and give back and have a productive way to spend their time.
Yeah. For me, I mean, I'm definitely taking home a lot of these stories that I can share with my community, and I think something that was really memorable personally from a story perspective was the Hillel director at the Hesed told us that when the crisis first started and she asked her students, the participants, what they needed from her, all they answered was Shabbat, and that was, I think, really touching to me. I think it was clear that what she could provide for them was this, you know, long tradition that the Jewish people have, and provide them stability and connection week by week. It's the constant she can provide, so that no matter what happens from Saturday through Friday, I guess, they knew there was going to be something that they could look forward to, and that to me was really meaningful, that in times of crisis, it's their Judaism that's kind of anchoring them in consistency and support and stability. They could have asked for anything. I'm sure the director would have made it happen, but all they really wanted was Shabbat. So that to me is really meaningful and really special, and I'm for sure going to take that back to my community.
Okay. The privilege of meeting so many wonderful and incredible people of the community of Lviv, Ukraine, and I think it really spoke volumes to their lived experience. And you know, throughout our entire time in Ukraine, we learned about Jews who either their Judaism was destroyed in the Holocaust, or was destroyed under communism, or they were forced to convert or forced to go into hiding. And to see so many Jews be proud today to live their Judaism, in my opinion, is something very, very special and miraculous. And JDC does so much incredible work to help vulnerable Jews, and specifically elderly Jews. And before our trip into Ukraine, we spoke to the executive director of the JCC of Krakow, who said that some of the main work they do is to help Jews reconnect to their Judaism. Some Jews who have just recently discovered that they're Jewish. And that to me is very, very special. And I think that is a step that me and you can take on together to help the next generation of Jews be proud and to be the best versions of themselves they can be, and to discover themselves. I really think that when we go home, I would love to do what I can to help the next generation. Unfortunately, Holocaust survivors won't be with us forever. And many Holocaust survivors' families were killed off or thought they were killed off, and they were forced to go into hiding. And what better mitzvah can we do for those children, for those grandchildren and great-grandchildren, to help them continue the story, so that the story of these Holocaust survivors don't end with the Holocaust, but only continues in Poland, Ukraine, or wherever they are in the world.
We concluded the trip to Ukraine with a wonderful Shabbat dinner at the end of the week, and it was in a synagogue currently under renovation with many different Jewish people from all across the country attending.
I'm gonna go